Few names in American music carry the weight of Willie Nelson, not just for his voice, but for what he represents. Decades of cultural influence, a career that moved across generations, and a presence that became larger than the stage itself.
Well, the best things that are happening to me is I have a great family.
Because beyond the tours, the records, the public image, there are 7 children who grew up at very different moments of that life. Now, in 2026, they are no longer standing beside the name. They are building their own. Some move toward music and public life. Others choose distance, privacy, or entirely different paths. So the question becomes, how do you shape your own identity under a name the world already recognizes? And what do those 7 different answers begin to reveal when we look closer, one by one? And it all begins with his firstborn, Renee Buts. At the age of 79, and only then, Willie Nelson discovered that he had a daughter. Renee Buts, born in 1953 in Texas, was the daughter of Willie Nelson and his old friend Mary Haney. Renee grew up in an ordinary family, married Joel Buts in 1976, lived near Houston, and worked as a graphic designer. She had a daughter, Noelle, and a granddaughter, Jordan, making Willie a great-grandfather as soon as he learned the news. In his 2012 memoir, Roll Me Up and Smoke Me When I Die, Musings from the Road, Willie Nelson wrote about discovering that he had fathered a child with his friend, as shared by People magazine. I had an old close friend, Mary Haney, that I had lost touch with, but recently ran into after many decades, he wrote. Turns out Mary and I had a child together called Renee. Renee's life connected with her father in a private and emotional way. After their reunion, she and Willie quickly built a warm father-daughter relationship. In 2016, on Father's Day, Renee shared a post on Facebook with a photo of the two of them. "This is also my dad and I love him so much. Happy Father's Day, Dad. I know I'm a really lucky girl to have 2 of the finest men in this world be dads to me." She passed away from cancer in August 2017 at the age of 64. Willie never publicly commented on this loss, but the family knows he cherished the short time he had with his eldest daughter. And just as that quiet chapter with Renee comes to a close, let's move on to another daughter, one whose path was completely different. Lana Nelson Fowler. Willie and his first wife, Matthews, welcomed their eldest child, Lana Nelson, on November 11, 1953, into a life shaped by both instability and creativity. Growing up across places like Washington and Oregon while her father worked as a radio DJ, her childhood carried the rhythm of movement and financial uncertainty, but also moments of quiet intimacy that would define their bond. One of those moments stayed with her for life. As a child, she would call local stations to request "Red-Headed Stranger," a song her father later transformed into the iconic Red-Headed Stranger. Long before it became a landmark in country music, Lana was among the first to hear it, a small but telling detail that reflects her place not in the spotlight, but close to its source. Her life intersected with Willie's journey in deeply personal ways, blending family moments with creative work. One story often recalled reflects both his unpredictable schedule and their bond. As shared by Texas Monthly, Lana Nelson, 22-year-old daughter of Willie Nelson, married George Fowler, 26, in mid-June on the patio of the feedlot, since the father of the bride was delayed by bad weather after a gig in Houston. The ceremony paused until he arrived, and when he did, he stepped in simply as a father, walking her down the aisle. Her path was not defined by fame, but by continuity. Through family albums, documentaries, and interviews, Lana took on the role of an informal historian, documenting a legacy that extends beyond music into relationships and shared memory. And in many ways, her life suggests that legacy is not only built on stage, but also carried forward by those who choose to remain just outside the spotlight, holding the story together. In the next part of the story, let's turn to Susie Nelson. She once wrote a book about her father and didn't try to protect him. And that story belongs to Susie Nelson. Born in 1956, she is the biological younger sister of Lana Nelson. Susie grew up in the same unstable, constantly moving world, but the way she processed it would take a different direction. Her parents divorced when she was still young. The home didn't just change, the feeling of it changed. And for a while, so did she, so did Carlen. There were years she would later describe not with pride, but with honesty. Struggles in her teens, addiction, loss, a life that didn't follow any clean narrative. But here's where the story shifts. Not dramatically, quietly. At 27, she went back to finish school. Then something else happened. She didn't run away from her past. She sat down and wrote it. In 1987, Susie published Heart-Worn Memories, a personal biography that was as much about herself as it was about her father. It wasn't a tribute. It wasn't a takedown. It was something rarer. A daughter trying to understand the man behind the legend and her place inside that story. But even then, there's a quiet tension underneath it all. Susie once expressed this with quiet honesty in her book, later shared by Chicago Tribune. "I love my father as a father, but I wouldn't want to be married to him, because his life doesn't belong to him, and you're only a small part of that world." While Lana remained quietly supportive behind the scenes, Susie Nelson chose to face the complexities of their father-daughter relationship more directly. Susie's life reflects a journey from pain to healing, and a reminder that a father-daughter bond can endure. She is not just the daughter of Willie Nelson, but someone who turned family memories into a lasting legacy. After Susie Nelson comes her younger brother, William Billy Hugh Nelson Jr., born less than 2 years after his sister. Willie Nelson was married to his teenage sweetheart, Martha Matthews, from 1952 to 1962. Billy was their only son and the youngest child of the marriage. His father was constantly on the road, and childhood was shaped by both inspiration and emotional distance. And in that space between admiration and absence, Billy found his own path, not toward fame, but toward something more intimate, gospel music, a place where his voice could exist without comparison. Years later, they reunited through music, not as legend and child, but as two artists. In the late 1980s, they recorded together, creating Peace in the Valley, the Gospel Truth Collection. At its heart was My Body's Just a Suitcase for My Soul. Billy led. Willie followed, and for a moment the roles quietly reversed. Outside the studio, however, Billy's life was unraveling. His marriage to Janet Caldwell ended. His mother passed away during Christmas of 1989, and what followed was a spiral into depression and alcohol, arrests, rehab, attempts to recover. Yet those close to him never described him as lost. They described him as trying. In a piece by People magazine, it was written, "Billy's sister Lana said her brother suffered from depression. He didn't want to be depressed. He didn't want to be that guy. He tried really hard, he did." That is where the story shifts, not between success and failure, but between effort and outcome, between wanting to be okay and not being able to get there. Even his father didn't fully see how deep it had gone. Just weeks before Christmas 1991, Willie visited Billy in Nashville and believed things were improving. Until the morning of December 25th, Billy was found in his cabin in Tennessee. He was 33 years old. It became the moment that permanently changed Willie Nelson's life.
When I lost my son, that was a big one. And, everything else seems to pale in comparison. I got through that one, so I figure anything else, if you get through that, you can get through anything.
It sounds strong, but underneath, it carries something quieter. Some losses don't fade. They become part of who you are. Billy Nelson didn't leave behind a long career or a public spotlight. But through a few songs, one unfinished album, and the memories carried by those closest to him. He left something quieter, a reminder that behind every legend is a family. And just as that voice fades into memory, the story softens and gently turns to Paula Carlen Nelson. Paula Carlen Nelson was born on October 27, 1969, in Houston, Texas, the daughter of Willie Nelson and Connie Kepke. Her childhood unfolded on the road, shaped by the rhythm of the family band. She grew up around acoustic guitars, gospel harmonies, and long nights with her father. Before music, Paula worked a range of jobs, including waitressing, massage therapy, and counseling at an Alzheimer's center. She also earned a black belt in Taekwondo. Her path into music came later than most, only taking shape in her late 20s. By 2016, that quiet persistence led to recognition when she was named Female Artist of the Year by the Country Music Association of Texas. Alongside performing, Paula built a long career in radio. From Sun Radio in Texas to hosting the Paula Nelson Show on SiriusXM Outlaw Country, she developed a deep connection to classic country music. She described playing the songs her father loved as a great bonding experience. Her relationship with Willie has always been quiet but deeply rooted. He played guitar on her track Primrose Path, and they have recorded together multiple times, including Have You Ever Seen the Rain and a 2023 version of Slow Down Old World. Reflecting on that recording, Paula shared with Garden and Gun magazine, "Recording this with my dad is so special because it's his song, so I knew already how much it meant to him," Paula says. "And it goes without saying how much it means to me to hear him say how proud of me he is. It's a feeling that's hard to describe but will stay with me forever." Nguyen, Tom Willie in turn, often sent simple messages. "I'm listening to you on your radio. It sounds great. You're sounding great." For Paula, those moments carried more meaning than anything public. Her personal life today feels calm and self-contained. Paula has been married twice, but she is currently single. Paula Nelson lives a life that feels intentionally simple, grounded more in everyday moments than in anything tied to fame. Her social media offers a clear window into that rhythm. Animals, especially rescue dogs and cats, are at the center of it. She regularly shares videos of animals that have been saved, some still carrying visible disabilities, but moving with joy and resilience. There are also quiet, warm moments between pets and their owners. She also runs her own online store, where she sells merchandise like t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and small accessories linked to her music and personal brand, occasionally mentioning projects or songs she enjoys without turning it into something overly promotional. Whether she is a well-known DJ on SiriusXM or the daughter of Willie Nelson, Paula chooses to show up in the simplest way. Just someone who loves animals, loves music, and appreciates the good moments in everyday life. And next, the story shifts to a different rhythm, softer, deeper, carrying the name Amy Lee Nelson. Just 2 days after Willie Nelson hosted his 4th of July picnic in 1973, a moment that marked an entire era, Amy Lee Nelson was born amid the sound of guitars, laughter, and the dust of Austin roads. Amy grew up in the shadow of a legend, but she never tried to become a second version of him. At 5, she watched The Muppet Movie, heard Rainbow Connection, and spent the next 20 years convincing her father to record it. The result was The Rainbow Collection, where Willie sings lullabies, and Amy contributes 2 songs of her own. She didn't enter music loudly, but through quiet persistence. In 1998 in San Diego, Amy met Kathy Guthrie, daughter of Arlo Guthrie, while working at a bar. With a ukulele and an acoustic guitar, they formed folk uke, not country, not outlaw, just playful, offbeat folk, songs that made people laugh, even as Amy quietly shaped her own identity beyond her father's shadow. Suddenly, the direction shifted. Amy moved into film. She spent 15 years making King of the Roadies, a documentary that premiered in April 2025, showing that Amy is not just a director, but also someone who keeps alive the long road stories that only Willie's daughter can fully understand the weight of. And then, one day in 2021, Amy called her father in tears after learning about children being separated from their parents at border detention centers. Willie did not respond with a sad ballad. He simply said, calmly, as Amy later shared on her website, to gather all who are like-minded together to make a plan to help these families. Meanwhile, Willie's Kids, the nonprofit Amy co-founded, is another chapter, inspired by her father, who has always protected the vulnerable. Amy once shared with People magazine, "He's always taught us that animals are people and horses are smarter than people. He raised us to respect animals." Amy told the outlet of her father, "A lot of guys collect cars. He collects horses." He said, "I ride a lot better than I drive." I often think, in a family where music is the common language, Amy chose to tell stories through images and work. That is not rebellion. It is the deepest kind of design. Her father travels the road with Trigger. She travels with a camera, a ukulele, and a quiet willingness to stay hidden. Both of them find the vulnerable, whether it is an aging roadie, an abandoned horse, or a child separated from their parents. Amy Lee Nelson's story is not finished. It is still unfolding. The daughter of the King of Country does not need a crown. She only needs a true story, a ukulele, and the belief that, as her father once said, we are all the same in the things that make us laugh and cry. Following Amy, a younger voice begins to emerge. Lucas Autry Nelson. Born on Christmas Day in 1988, Lucas Autry Nelson didn't just receive life's greatest gift. He also carried the enormous shadow of Willie Nelson. Lucas grew up between two worlds, the heat of Texas and the waves of Hawaii, under the steady care of his mother, Annie D'Angelo. His father was often away. Each time Willie left for the road, the boy felt it. But instead of resentment, at 11, Lucas wrote his first song, "You Were It," and his father later placed it on the album It Will Always Be. That was the moment Lucas began to understand. Music wasn't there to replace his father. It was how the two of them spoke the same language.
Because my dad would leave all the time, and I would be naturally upset as a little kid, and I knew that if I learned how to be a great musician, then we would be bonded forever.
That's a lot of pressure, though, on a kid, right?
Yeah, but at the time, and even now, it wasn't about being as great as him. It was just about speaking the same language.
You might think Lucas would rely on his father's fame. A big mistake. He drove a 1991 Ford Econoline, played 250 shows a year for 15 years. No shortcuts, just him and his band.
You know, I really wanted to make my dad proud by being completely self-sufficient, you know?
Right.
I wanted to make him proud by not needing him.
And then suddenly, in November 2025, both father and son were nominated for a Grammy in the Best Traditional Country Album category. For the first time in history, Willie, at 92, with Oh, What a Beautiful World. Lucas, at 37, with American Romance. Two men standing on the same invisible stage. Not competing, just legacy. That bond, shaped by both closeness and distance, is clearly reflected in Lucas's own words. On Father's Day, he wrote on Instagram, "I'm lucky to have mine as an inspiration." And perhaps most deeply, he admitted, "Music has both kept us together and apart throughout our lives, but I have never felt for a second that I wasn't loved." As for his love life, Lucas Nelson remains quite private. In an interview with the Los Angeles Times in late 2025, he shared, "I've been in love before. I was with someone for 8 years, and I was on the road for 4 of those years. I was committed to her and wanted to marry her, and then we grew apart, realized it wasn't exactly right." Lucas once joked on the Biscuits and Jam podcast in 2023 that the biggest difference between him and his father is how they view marriage.
I think the difference between him and I is that I've decided to stay away from marriage, at least in the beginning, so that I can pick one and stick with it.
Well, learning some things from your father, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't want to go through 3 divorces and then settle when I'm 50. I'd rather just settle when I'm 50, if that's what it takes.
Yeah.
Lucas Autry Nelson is now 37 years old. He is still writing, still touring, still being with his father whenever he can. And Willie? He is still singing, still smiling, still Willie. And maybe the most beautiful part of this story isn't who wins a Grammy. It's that 2 men, 2 generations, have still found a way to speak to each other through music, in a language only they understand. Walking alongside Lucas is Jacob Micah Nelson, the youngest son of Willie Nelson and Annie D'Angelo. Jacob Micah Nelson, born in 1990 in Austin, Texas, is the youngest son of Willie Nelson and Annie D'Angelo. He grew up in a world most people only know through the radio, tour buses, the smell of hand-rolled smoke, and the sound of trigger echoing every night. But Micah never set out to become Willie Nelson Jr. The name Particle Kid says everything. When he was 14, his father once misspoke prodigal son as Particle Kid. Micah didn't correct it. He kept it. Later, when he formed his band, it became his identity. And over time, that identity became something he would openly define in his own words. As he shared with webzine Americana, "I'm no prodigal son. I am his particle kid. I would never try to be him, or even pretend, because nobody will ever be him. But believe it or not, I do relate to the Willie fans because I am one of them." At first glance, it might look like another story of legacy continuing, but it isn't. Micah does not follow traditional country like his brother Lucas. He plays multiple instruments, produces, paints, creates animation, and even experiments with cymatics, turning sound into visual patterns through water and light. He was once a member of Insects vs. Robots, opened for Flaming Lips, played guitar for Neil Young and Crazy Horse starting in 2024, and collaborated with Arcade Fire, Sean Lennon, and Jay Massis. He is a true multimedia artist. Not a copy, not even a variation. Something else entirely. And yet the center of the story keeps pulling back to the same place, his father, his. And then came the song, "If I Die When I'm High, I'll Be Halfway to Heaven." Micah wrote it like a love letter. "A tribute to my dad," he once shared. At the same time, it carried a quiet pushback against anyone who thought he didn't understand his father simply because he didn't sound like him. When Willie joined him on stage, their voices met, one weathered, one young, and for a moment at Farm Aid 2021, the crowd fell completely still. No drama, just a father and son singing about life all the way to its final breath. In 2024, when Willie was 91, he handed over his 76th album, Last Leaf on the Tree, to Micah. Not just to play, but to shape, to choose the songs, to build the sound, to leave his own imprint. When asked about it, Willie answered with just 4 words: "He's a real artist." Outside the spotlight, Micah Nelson lives a quiet, private life. He married Alexandra Dascalu in May 2019. The two rarely share their married life on social media, but often collaborate creatively through music and animation. Their small family also includes a special member, a dog, an Australian cattle dog named Tsuki Blue Dascalu Nelson, who frequently appears under a nickname. But even in that quiet life, one influence remains constant. He once said, reflecting on his father, as shared by Yahoo Entertainment, "I learned empathy, kindness, and generosity from him. I love the way he treats people. I wouldn't be a musician without him." They are not a perfect father and son. They are 2 completely different people, one an enduring country icon, the other a layered, unconventional artist, but they choose to stay close in their own way. No pressure, no comparison, just together. That is what makes Micah Nelson's story more than just a story about someone famous. It is a story about how you can love your father so deeply that you don't need to become him. Today, as Willie is well into his 90s, his legacy is not measured by the number of hits or awards. It lives in the way his children choose to stay by his side, not by copying him, but by being fully themselves. Willie Nelson did not build a perfect dynasty. He built a real family, messy, diverse, sometimes painful, but always filled with music and love. And perhaps that is the most beautiful ballad he ever wrote. Thank you for spending time with this story of Willie Nelson and his family. If this journey gave you a new perspective, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. We'd really value how you see legacy, identity, and what it means to belong. Wishing you a day filled with music, warmth, and the people who matter most. And until next time, we'll see you in the next story.